Check, check.
From the audience. We ask them that as part of their registration. Most of the questions that we sent you guys were from. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Fran Miley, and I'm the Director of Corporate Relations for the American Cancer Society, and I want to welcome you to Society Talk. We're really excited to have such a fantastic panel this morning and talk about this really great topic of influencing others and managing up, although we'll hear from them about what they prefer to call it instead of managing up. We're really grateful to have these community leaders with us today, and I hope you enjoy the panel discussion. To get started, I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Jennifer Rigdon. She has been with the American Cancer Society as a volunteer. She is the leader of our Missouri Area Board, and we want to thank her for her volunteer time. And she is also an expert in communications. She has been doing that for over 20 years and also works as a university professor and intercollegiate debate coach. She is currently the vice president and manager of corporate communications at Benjamin F. Edwards and Company. So if you'll join me in welcoming Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
So I'll turn it over to Jennifer, and we'll get started with this morning's panel discussion.
Very good. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to introduce our panelists so we can get started talking about this great topic. Missy Kelly, who's right here in the middle. Give us a wave, Missy. Missy's the President and Chief Executive Officer for Downtown St. Louis Incorporated, the Downtown St. Louis Community Improvement District, the Downtown St. Louis Foundation, and Downtown Now. So you have nothing going on, clearly.
Sounds like a lot.
These not-for-profit entities work together to catalyze economic growth and vibrancy in downtown St. Louis, the heart of the St. Louis region. In leading efforts to make downtown a thriving business district, neighborhood, and entertainment destination, Missy regularly tapped by the media to comment on current events, issues, and initiatives that impact downtown. She works closely with St. Louis City civic and business leaders to address issues and opportunities in downtown St. Louis. Help me welcome Missy. Next, on the end, we have Ken Varell.
Good morning.
Ken Varell is the Senior Director of Business Transformation at St. Louis-based Ameren Corporation, parent company of rate-regulated energy companies that serve more than 2.4 million electric and 900,000 natural gas customers in Illinois and Missouri. During his more than 30-year tenure at Ameren, Ken has served in a variety of leadership roles, including roles in information technology, customer service, regulatory strategy, and corporate planning. In addition, he currently serves as the Chief of Staff for Ameren's Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer, Warner Baxter. And Warner's very involved in the American Cancer Society, too, just like Ken is now. We've sucked you in. It's too late for you.
I'm in.
As Chief of Staff, Ken works with the Ameren Executive Leadership Team and its Board of Directors in developing and executing Ameren's corporate strategy. Ken earned a bachelor's degree in Management Information Systems and a master's degree in Business Administration from Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. Help me welcome Ken.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, right here next to me is Josh Day. Josh is the Clinical Program Manager for the Department of Quality and Innovation at Siteman Cancer Center. He has completed undergraduate studies at Truman State University and graduate studies at Webster University. Today, Josh and the Department of Quality and Innovation at Siteman Cancer Center provide data capture, management, and analytics services, as well as quality improvement and lean management services to leaders and teams at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine. The DQ&I team is situated within their organization in such a way that a high degree of fluency in influencing without authority is necessary. So please help me welcome Josh. So Salvador Dali said that the secret to his influence is that it remained a secret. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to manage up and lead without authority. And so we have our great panel here who's going to talk about their experience with managing up and give us some secrets, if you will, about how to move forward without authority. So let's start by getting to know you a little bit. We're going to do a lightning round of questions. So first of all, what's your favorite emoji on your phone?
I get kind of heckled sometimes because I don't use emojis. I still use the colon parenthesis.
It still works.
Which changes to an emoji for you, I think.
Sometimes it does, yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't?
I'm pretty old school with my emojis.
All right, we're going to have to keep an eye on Josh.
I know, sorry.
That's all I'm telling you. Missy, what's your favorite emoji on your phone?
I do the blowing a kiss like all the time.
Okay.
Not at the office, but usually don't use emojis at the office or with
I was going to say, do you ever
but
accidentally do it at the office?
Thankfully, no.
Okay.
Don't
Very
jinx
good.
me.
I'm no jinxing. Ken, your favorite
I'm
emoji?
more like Josh. I don't use them a lot, but if I use one, it's usually just a smiley face.
Okay, very good. Josh, are you a night owl or an early bird?
Early bird, by far.
Okay, Missy?
I'm feeling kind of lazy. I've been thinking about this. I don't think I'm either. I think I really like to sleep. So I go to bed.
Very good.
I would say I'm more of an early bird than a night owl.
Okay, Ken?
Early bird.
Definitely an early bird, okay. Who's been the biggest influence in your life?
As I get older and older, I realize it's my father, whether or not I have consciously wanted it to be or not. I act more and more like him all the time, and I've come to respect that and appreciate that.
Very good. Missy, same question for you.
My dad.
Okay, and Ken?
Same here, by far.
Okay, so dads have a lot of influence. Dads in the audience, remember that.
Early birds, dads.
Dads, early
We
birds.
have a lot in common.
I think, well, we have a lot of success on the panel, so that tells you, here are some things that you need to pay attention to. All right? So our first question for all of our panelists, and Ken, I'm going to start with you. So now that we know some fun facts, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, kind of how you ended up where you are today?
You know, I've been very blessed. I'm born and raised in St. Louis area. I've lived here, and I've been with Ameren for 33 years in May. And I've had probably a dozen or so different jobs. The job I'm in today is probably the most rewarding job. And if all the Ameren people in the audience don't tell Warner this, but I love my job. It's a job where it's not really a job. I enjoy it. I go to work with Warner and our leadership team to work with all of our 8,700 employees to fill our mission of power to quality of life. And I get to work with those folks every day. There's not a day that doesn't go by where I don't learn something. I've learned more in the last 5 years than the first 25 years. So it's a great job. I love, and the best part of it is, Warner is so involved in the community, and I've met so many great people outside of Ameren, whether it's American Cancer Society, Variety, Regional Chamber, work with Missy's organizations. It's really got me to really appreciate St. Louis so much more. And that's probably the best part of my job, is that not just the people inside of Ameren, but the hundreds of people I've worked with and met outside of Ameren. So I really just absolutely love it.
Perfect.
So don't tell him that, okay?
Yeah, nobody tell Warner.
Yeah.
Okay, so Missy, we were talking a little bit earlier about how your backstory and how you ended up where you are, and I thought this was really interesting.
Yeah, so I actually never took a business class in college, and I was a psychology major, and started right out of college, went to WashU to get a master's in social work, and I did that for a year, and did the cost-benefit analysis of that, and also just kind of felt like maybe I needed to make sure this is what I wanted to do before I kept spending money. Ended up getting into the marketing world, and ultimately product development and management at Energizer. I worked at Coca-Cola. I ended up getting an MBA from WashU, and then so after never taking a business class in college, so that was a big dive in, but. After that, I worked at Energizer for 7 years in business planning. So I had about 20 years in the corporate world, and when I left Energizer, Express Scripts, I just felt like I just couldn't do corporate anymore, and I really felt that calling from my social work, roots and desires that I had really early in my career. And decided that I wanted to do something that was a little bit more in service. But I also really liked working with the business leaders and the strategy of business. So this has been an incredible opportunity for me, because in my role, I get to work with the business leaders in downtown as well as the civic leaders. So I get to work with the mayor's office, the police department, St. Patrick's Center. So it's a really cool mix of things that are in service as well as the business world. And like Ken, the people that I've gotten to meet in the community and across industries has just been probably the most rewarding part for me. But I never could have drawn a line from where I started when I graduated from college to here. It just just didn't really, it's not something that I could have projected, but it's worked out really well.
Very good. You never know where your path will lead you.
That's right.
All right, so Josh, same question for you.
Yeah, my career has always sort of centered around the question of how I can help people like working. In college, as I was exiting and about to enter the workforce, I knew a lot of people that were excited about it, and a lot of people that kind of had their dreams shot down early on, wanting to get into a particular career and having a lot of trouble doing so. And just knowing people over the course of my life who either work for the weekend or work begrudgingly and don't really enjoy it. And I realized that I was about to start a new chapter in my life, and we all sleep 60% of the hours that we are allotted in our life, and then the remaining hours that we are allotted after that, we're working for the remaining 80% of those hours. It's a big part of our life, and I really wanted to do something that helped me enjoy work and helped other people enjoy work. So I thought going into HR was a natural way to do that, to kind of work in the employee engagement and the employee relations sphere. And I did that for a couple of years with St. Louis Children's, and learned quite a bit and loved it a lot. And in doing so, I also got exposed to a team at Children's that was helping to implement the principles and systems around lean operations for the hospital. And I watched them solve a lot of problems that not only delivered great patient care at the end of a system or at the end of a process, but I also got to watch that mechanism of lean and those efforts to problem solve impact the employee experience too. And I fell in love with it. I thought that was really neat work, and I had a disposition for it, and luckily I was given an opportunity to do that kind of work. And then came aboard at Siteman about 2 years ago to work in that space for the Cancer Center, and then just recently to kind of rebrand that work and kind of start our journey around quality and innovation for the Cancer Center.
Very good.
Thanks.
So our first question is for all of you, and we'll start with Missy. What is managing up, and what isn't managing up? How would you define it?
So I think of it as being very clear on what the overall business objectives are, and of the leader that you're managing up. That what are their goals? Really understanding what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then how you can support them in being successful in that. I think it's not trying to find favor with that person. It's more about building trust and figuring out how you can contribute. So, I mean, generally, I would say that is what it is. And again, I would say it's not about trying to find favor or even to really get recognition. And ultimately, I think the effects of managing up certainly help the leader in accomplishing their goals, but also helps you if they're more organized and and it's a very streamlined what's trying to be accomplished, then that trickles down to the rest.
Okay, so Ken, I know that you have some strong feelings about the phrase managing up. So same question for you. What is it and what isn't it?
And really building off of Missy said, I don't like the term managing up, because I don't want to manage my boss. To me, it's about developing relationships with all your leaders. And if you really want to have an influence on your leaders, in my mind, it's about, Missy said, building a trust, building a relationship with them, and having them come to you as, I'll say, the term I like is strategic advisor. I want them to think that I'm in it for them, and it's no greater success for me when I see our organization and our leadership team be successful. So I don't use that word managing up, because I don't want to manage them. I want them to help work together as a team.
Josh, same question for you.
Sure.
What is it?
Yeah, so I would suggest that whatever we mean by managing up, it's also the same thing whether you're doing it upward, sideways, or downward. Like the same methods and patterns of thinking and the way that we interact with people. To both of your points, it's relationship building. I think the managing part can have the connotation of kind of an authoritarian sort of approach to things, and there's absolutely a place for that. But I think that first and foremost, it's the whole influencing without authority as the primary mechanism by which we create movement for those above us, the side of us, below us in the org structure.
So how can a person without authority be a leader then?
If you look at the definition of leadership, it talks about, in my mind, it's about how a person influences others and how to get others to follow you. And nowhere in there where I read definitions of leadership, it talks about authority or power. And I think one of the great examples here in St. Louis is, I'll ask you guys, who are the leaders on the St. Louis Cardinals? But name one. Yachty.
Yachty.
Look at Yachty. And Mike Matheny may disagree with me, but Yachty doesn't have authority, doesn't have power. But if you look on the field with the pitching staff, in the dugout, and probably in the locker room too, he is a leader of that organization. He takes that group and influences those 24, 25 other players for the greater good of the Cardinals. But he's not the GM, the owner, or the coach. So that's a great example in my mind of how leaders can influence others, more so even sometimes than bosses can. And so that's why I think it's really possible to do. I think anybody can manage. It's really difficult to lead people because you got to build trust and relationships, and you have the right qualities to do that.
So building on that, on relationship building as part of building authority without authority, tell me a little bit about what you think about that. How does a person without authority become a leader? Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the capacity to create movement. I think when we use the word leader or influence, those are almost synonymous in this conversation. And when I think of either of those things, I think of one individual having the capacity to genuinely create relationship unto movement in a particular intended direction. Whether that's coming from real authority or that's coming from informal relationship, I think that it's the capacity to create movement towards an intended direction.
Okay, so toward a goal of some
sure.
kind. Okay. So Missy, what's the first thing someone should do if they've never had to influence others and manage up? What's the first thing you have to do in order to make that work?
Well, I think it is that you have to really be clear on what the objectives are. So it's not even as much about the person that you're trying to influence as it is your actions and what the ultimate goal is that you're trying to achieve. So I think it's really important to be clear on that and not get as caught up in who's higher or lower. I mean, and I think a little bit of what Josh was alluding to, in that, there's influencing that's required managing sideways too. I mean, that's probably more common even, that, cross-functionally trying to influence your peers in an organization. So I would say that the first thing is to remember that this is about the work and it's about accomplishing a common objective. And when you're really clear on that, it makes it easier to not get caught up in the dynamics of who's more, who has a higher pay grade than you.
Or a higher title than you,
Or
or something like that. Okay, so Josh, then generally what factors contribute to one's ability to influence? What kind of personality traits, what kind of activities? How do you build up the ability to influence?
Sure. At a really rudimentary level, I think it's just being nice, right? Like, just like working the fundamentals, right? Is being genuine, being kind, being nice, being those things always too. I think it's important to recognize that we can't exercise influence only when we need it, or build influence only when we need it. We have to be doing it always.
Okay.
When you're walking the halls, when you're riding the elevator, when you're having lunch, when you're doing X, Y, or Z. I think we are always building some kind of repository, or we're gaining additional kind of deposits into that bank of influence, so that when we need to withdraw from it, we have something there.
So what I hear you saying is we have to be nice all the time.
We should always be nice.
I'm going to really give this a try.
Let's wrap it up. That was great.
Yeah. Be nice.
Good summary.
Ken, what's the best piece of advice you would give someone trying to influence their leadership?
I think it's really, in my mind, it's about, the term I like to use is servant leader. And it's not about us, it's about the team. And I think the more we can build off of what we can do best for the team, so that the people you're working with, whether it is up, down, or sideways, the team for us is 8,700 employees. And Josh had a good point about you're on all the time, no matter where you're at, elevators, hallways, wherever, you're on all the time. And whether even outside of work. And that emotional bank account is what I call it, is that you always have to be not worried, but thinking about what we can do for the team. And I think that way you're better, and once you get that relationship and that trust, they come to you for advice. So instead of pushing, they're pulling, they're wanting you to help them, and now you got influence. If you want influence, the best way in my mind to get influence is get people to like you, trust you and have that relationship, so when they come to you for advice and guidance, and now you got influence across the organization.
So it's, I love all the advice that we're getting about building influence across the organization, up, down, sideways, being kind to people, building relationships, et cetera. Missy, what would you caution someone about trying to influence without authority?
I think you have to be really careful to make sure that your goal is not to get recognition. So you may get recognition as a result, but that cannot be what's driving you in the process. If you're truly trying to influence, and remember, influencing doesn't mean you always get your way or what, you're not manipulating, you're not, you can influence someone without necessarily ultimately getting exactly what you wanted, because as Ken said, it is about, it is team, and it is ultimately about the company's mission objectives, what you're trying to get to. So I think the thing that can trip us up, especially when we're working with people that we perceive or that are above us in the organization, is that kind of, I think, innate desire that we have to feel like we impressed someone. And so I think it's really important to kind of keep that in check, that this isn't about getting recognition. It is about the work, and it is about working with everyone to come out with the best solution.
Okay, so it's about moving the ball forward.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not about the individual or the praise that you might get in the end. And it's really awesome when that happens, but it doesn't always happen. And what I have found is that if you're driven by that, then you're not as open to what others are saying and trying to contribute, because you're trying to drive your thing, and because that's what gets you the recognition if it was your idea and you did it.
So Josh, is there a particular leadership style that you use when you're trying to influence others, or influence without authority, autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I really don't. I think it's more having a capacity to flex to individuals that you're working with.
Okay.
I think being a really good listener first, as opposed to driving an agenda first. I think if you can really know the desires of the individual that you're trying to influence, it's going to give you the capacity to not only meet your needs and to ultimately drive your agenda forward, but also to meet their needs along the way. And I think in some scenarios, you have to be able to lead out of deference too. You have to be able to defer to the expertise that someone else has that you don't have. I think it's so different in every single situation that you really just have to be a good listener to understand what they need. It may be any one of those particular styles of leadership at any given point in time.
So you look at it as the ability to adapt to the person you're trying to influence, as opposed to making them adapt to you, to your leadership style.
I think that's very important, yeah.
Okay, very good. So Missy, what do you do when you're not aligned on an issue with somebody that you're trying to influence?
Well, I think that one of the really key attributes or factors of being successful in influencing is that ability to really actively listen and understand where their perspective is. So if you're not aligned, I think it's just in all of us to want to, you're thinking about what you're going to say next, so you can convince this person because they're just wrong, So I think that it's really important that you're engaging in active listening. I think validating is important. So even if you don't agree with what they're saying, validating is not endorsing it. It is in some ways it's echoing it back. It's just expressing that you hear them and that you hear their perspective. And what I have found with that is that then the person opens up a little bit more to hear you. So that is what I would do in situations like that. And if you have someone that's in that authoritarian style that, you were talking about
Right.
the different styles. So like somebody that's an authoritarian styles, to me, that's the most difficult to influence. But it's not impossible. I think that requires more patience. If you've got someone that is just really strong personality and is used to saying, this is what we're doing, this is how it gets done, and this is the right way. That is where patience comes in, and just really like the asking a lot of questions and then validating and in return. And I think that, again, if it's not necessarily about winning. Because I think that you actually can influence and maybe not get exactly what you wanted, but you still influence. You can still have that effect. And maybe if it was just having somebody think a little bit differently this time, or being open to a different perspective, then that's influencing.
So building those relationships in order to be able to influence is going to be a huge part
Yes.
of that process.
Yes.
And being able to move somebody just a little bit at a time. And maybe you don't win every time, but maybe
Right.
you win some of the times.
Yep.
Okay, so you should never say to somebody, no, you're wrong.
Well, I have been known to do that. I have to say.
I guess
don't
sometimes
advise
that
it.
works.
I
I
just
guess
don't think it
sometimes
works.
that works.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good point, though, to like, even if you don't agree with somebody, to affirm them still, because you open them up. That's huge.
So, Ken, I want to ask you a little bit about, you have a little bit of a dispersed workforce. So you have some people who are out in the field.
Yep.
And how do you continue to influence and have some level of authority over a dispersed workforce?
And really it's no different, because people are people, and it's about, you got to get out of the office. You got to spend time out in the field. And the last thing you want to do is come out there, well, I'm from corporate and I'm here to help, because usually it doesn't go well. So you try to get to understand what they do. And I'll never be a lineman. I never could do that, and I don't have the skill for it, don't have the courage to do that either. But you need to go out and work with the teams out in the field and learn their business as best you can. And Josh, in his role as well, part of being in the role we're in is to understand what they do and how we can help them do their job better. Because everybody wants to do their job better than they're doing it yesterday. And I think getting out in the field, and don't go out on a day when it's 70 and sunshine, go out when it's bad weather. I mean, earlier in my career, I tried to do every effort to go out during storms and do whatever I could to help. So they're there, they see you there trying to do your part to help the situation. I think it's like anything else, developing relationships, listening to them. And when you take an action item, when you go back to the office, make sure you do it. Because the last thing you're going to do is, they see what's going on. When I take Warner and I go out in the field, try to go as much as we can, we always come back with to-dos, and we always try to follow up as best and fast as we can, because they know that a lot of times we got folks from Excelsior Springs to Cape Girardeau to Northern Illinois. So we're all over the place. So we try to get out as much as we can. We never get out enough, but try to get out as much as you can. Try to understand and learn their business as much as you can, and try to give them tools to help them do the job better. It's really no different than anywhere else. People are people. All of our 8,700 want to do a better job, and it's our role as leaders to help them, give them the tools to do a better job. So it's more difficult, more challenging time-wise, but it means a lot more to people too. When we show up out in Peoria and in Carbondale, Illinois, they know we drove 3 hours, 4 hours to get there. And so you gotta make it worth your while and worth their time as well.
Very good. And again, the theme that keeps coming back to me is the building of relationships. That in order to influence others, no matter whether they're a dispersed workforce or they're working right with you, is to build those good relationships with them so that you can have some influence even without some authority.
Correct.
So, Josh, what's your best tactic to influence employees?
If listening feels like the best tactic,
Okay.
it's a negative tactic, or like a passive tactic, right? It's a lack of activity. But I think that it's in that kind of scenario where, again, this is kind of like to the points that we're all making, right? Like going and seeing and understanding, building influence through those relationships. I think that you cannot understand what an individual needs unless you're asking good questions and subsequently listening to those needs. When you have a leader who maybe is staunchly against what you're trying to influence them on, and they are more authoritarian in their style, you have to understand what their agenda is too, and mutually try to meet their agenda and your agenda through
Right.
whatever it is you're trying to carry out. So I think some capacity to ask good questions, listen. I also think this is just kind of a mental paradigm that I think is helpful that I heard a few years back, but if we can find people interesting, it helps a lot. Like
Oh, okay.
if I think just to be able to commit to that yourself, and anytime you're across from someone having a conversation, to find them very interesting. Because they are a different perspective, they're a different person, they have different experiences than you do, a different consciousness of the life that they're living. I think that if you can tap into that, step back from your own agenda for a second to just find them interesting, ask good questions, and listen well,
It
lead
kinda
with those follow-ups, that's a big deal.
It kind of goes back to seek first to understand.
Sure, yeah.
So the listening is a huge part of that. The relationship building is a huge part of that.
And I think what can help is just to be curious,
Yeah.
right? So instead of being either offended or immediately going to kind of judgment or how you're gonna, set them straight, being really curious and
Right.
which usually leads to asking questions.
Because they have a reason why they have that position.
Yeah.
And I think you can understand that position and maybe figure out where the common goal is.
So leadership development is a huge part of a lot of development plans that people are trying to work on. And I want to know, Missy, why do you think that managing up or leading without influence is a huge part of a development plan, a leadership development plan?
Honestly, I mean, when I look back at my career, I think that any upward mobility that I had in some of the big companies that I worked at, I really would say that the one attribute that helped me the most was the ability to influence without authority, because they were big companies, so cross-functional stuff, and and then the roles I was in, it was around creating systems and plans and processes for moving people forward, but who were working together cross-functionally. So, so whether you're in a system like that, like a company like that, where there's a lot of silos that you're working against, or even in the job that I'm in now, I mean, I'm the CEO of my organization, so it's a little easier to influence there. But when I'm working with the police chief, or the mayor, or Warner Baxter, I don't have the authority. So I think that it is probably the single most important skill to develop, because it does help you not only get people to, kind of follow or align in the direction that you believe is correct, but it helps you build those relationships and that trust, so that, as you said, Josh, building those things when you don't necessarily need something right then is always helpful. But that's why I think it's probably the most important aspect of leadership development.
So speaking of leadership development and being a good leader, Ken, you said something earlier about being a servant leader and that you believe in servant leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
It's one of those things where, back to my father being the greatest influence, he was the best servant leader I've ever seen. I didn't know it when I was a teenager. Sometimes I didn't even like it. I didn't appreciate what it was until I got, it's amazing how your dad gets smarter as you get older. But it's really about, it's not about us, it's about everybody else. And when you're a servant leader, it's really serving other people. And whether it's in your corporation, in your family, or in your organizations, it's, first of all, self-rewarding. It's unbelievable how good you feel when you see your team succeed. And I think, once again, there's a book I read called Why Your Boss Should Listen to You. And it's really about becoming a trusted strategic advisor. And when you're a servant leader, and your organization, whether it's up, down, or especially up, when they see you being the one who are what's best for the team, and people can call you and ask you for advice and guidance, now you got influence. And it's all about being a servant leader. And I think, personally, it's the most rewarding part of my job is when I see our team be successful. I work a lot with our board, and when our leadership team presents to the board and we have a great meeting, I play a small part in that. But really, my role is to help the leadership team be prepared for those things. And I think that's probably the biggest influence I have on our organization is being available for people. Wherever they are in our organization, I want to be there to help them so we all get better and we'll be more successful.
I want to turn the tables on you a little bit. You've all talked a lot about how you've been successful at being managing up and influencing without authority. Now I want to talk to you a little bit, Josh, I'm going to start with you, about a time where you tried to manage up and it didn't go well, and what you would do differently.
Yeah, actually a project that I was on at St. Louis Children's a few years back, we'd finished the project. We were ready to launch this new initiative, and the last meeting, I think it was the meeting where we intended to kind of kick things off, kind of a raw sort of environment. There was a medical director that was present, and I didn't know who he was. I was confused why he was there, who he was, and introduced myself and learned that he was a really key stakeholder that I didn't even know he existed. Like I didn't know that we should have had him involved in this up front.
Surprise.
And I think, yeah, huge surprise. And I think that's part of the due diligence that you have to exercise in an organization that is particularly matrixed or like multifaceted, which is probably describing more and more organizations nowadays, in that you don't have direct line of sight to all of the relationships that you might need. So to really do a strong inventory up front of who the people are that need to be involved, who the people's people are that need to be involved, and to really make sure that you have all the right people at the table.
I think it's interesting that you talk about the people's people, because there are gatekeepers who are influencing the person that you're trying to influence, and then they get in the middle of the conversation and you have now two layers that you're trying to influence. Don't ever underestimate the authority of an assistant. Ever underestimate that authority,
Sure.
because it can be really difficult to get past that person if you don't go about it the right way.
Yeah.
Same question for you. When did you try to influence or manage up and it didn't go well?
So I have a board member, one of my board members who I struggle with a little bit, and I met with him yesterday, and this is like perfect timing, but we had a situation about a year ago where we had a major initiative, and it was tricky. It involved HR, and it was just one of the, not fun, things that you have to deal with sometimes. And I had spent like 45 minutes on the phone with him the day before our board meeting because he had some questions. He's like, I really want to make sure that I can support you and that I've got your back on this. And I was like, okay, spent 45 minutes explaining it. He's like, okay, good, I'm good. And then at the board meeting, he voted no, and was really just really surprised me, and so really kind of broke my trust. Like I didn't have an issue with him not agreeing. I had an issue with okay, yeah, I'm on board. This is great. Thank you so much for the time, and then turning around and doing something the opposite. And what I learned. What I would do differently, first of all, is I was really angry. Not that he disagreed, but that I felt like he wasn't forthright, and it affected our relationship, and I really didn't want to work with him going forward, and that lasted quite a while. And then eventually, I met with him and talked to him, and learned that he voted no, not because he was against the initiative. He voted no because he knew it would pass. And there was one part of it that he thought we could do better. So he just wanted to go on record as saying no. And while I don't necessarily agree with that approach, what I learned from this and what I would do differently is not making the assumption that I wasn't successful in influencing him, or that even I understand why he took those actions, and that what the best thing would have been to do was early on, like right away, sit down, have the conversation, and understand, because then it became more and more difficult because I shut down. So then it became more and more difficult with him over the next, few months with other things. He became this kind of antagonistic, always the one in the room that's going to be difficult, that's going to, it's going to say no. And if I had just sooner sought to understand and listened more, then things would have been a lot easier over the following months. So I guess in summary, what I would say is that, even if success doesn't look like success, and it may not be, there's always another thing that has to be worked on. So, seeking to understand for the next time, building that bank account back up, that's going to be really important, especially if it's someone that you're going to be continuing to work with. And by the way, never think that you'll never work with that person again, because you'll run into them in another job, in another project. Right. It's just not worth it. So that's what I would do differently. Don't burn the bridges, and don't assume that he did. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. To me, I felt like, okay, well, he's just, made this decision, and it was really it was interesting when I did talk to him. It was really just style. It really is an interesting approach that he has to the way he manages relationships in his job. So had I been open to that, to thinking about it that way instead of being really kind of defensive and shutting down, then I think that my ability to influence him afterwards and other things would have been stronger.
And it goes back to what you talk, people are interesting, people are be curious about other people. And
don't make it about you, which is so hard to do sometimes.
And that really is hard to do, because your feelings can get hurt, or you get frustrated, and then it's about you again. Yeah. Okay, so same question for you, Ken.
Early, I've been doing this job with Warner now for 5 years, and earlier, one of my roles is I help prepare our leadership team for board meetings. So we have prep meetings for our upcoming board meetings. I act the role of a board member. So I ask the challenging questions, and I try to help them anticipate questions that might come up. Well, early on in this position, I did that. And the executive was kind of saying, I challenged her quite a bit on her position, her comments, and her statements, trying to help her think through all the questions that might come up next week. Well, the problem with that is I didn't explain to her my role, what I was trying to. She thought it was just me attacking her.
No.
Yeah. So either way, so we had a little conversation afterwards, and then after we sat down and talked about it, and I explained to her what I was really trying to accomplish, she thanked me for it. But she goes, "What?" But I said, "No, that before the meeting." So whatever role you're in, what position your role you're playing that day, make sure the people you're working with know that. And I just messed up. I just assumed she knew that. Well, it's a big mistake on my part. And either way, so it's about relationships again and trust. And she knew then, after that, when I asked those questions, it really wasn't me, Ken, asking the question. I'm helping her and the team be prepared for the next meeting. So it's be clear in the expectations. Yeah.
Very good. I think we've learned a lot of really cool stuff today, and I want to give our audience an opportunity to ask some questions of our panelists. They're here to help you, and they're here to give advice and share more information. I think we have a question right here.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and my question is, when you're leading through influence or leading at all, you always put yourself in like a vulnerable disposition, right? Because you don't know how people are going to react. So what do you do company-wide? Because this is a cultural thing. You have to have the culture for people to feel as though they can lead through influence and make themselves vulnerable. What do you do at your company to foster that?
I'll start. At Ameren, we have a thing called Safe to Say. And we built on it now. We safe to say, safe to challenge, and we go a step further and safe to innovate. And it's a saying, and it's hard, and really lead by example. Because when people challenge you, how do you respond to that? That's what it comes down to. It's not about me, it's about the organization. So the biggest thing we try to do is get our leaders, and I try to lead by example as well. When people do challenge you, you don't shut down, you don't get mad, you seek to understand, you ask questions, develop relationships, but it's hard, no doubt about it. And I think you can only control or influence so many people in your area. So the best way to influence people is, by my mind, how you act yourself. It's a challenge, no doubt.
I have an answer. I'm not entirely sure it will answer your question, but I'll say it and we'll see. So I think it's a really relevant question, particularly within the healthcare industry, because it's a very hierarchical industry, and I think historically we as an industry are starting to push back on a not safe to speak culture, and we're learning how to, within a hospital setting, encourage safety in speaking up. Learning how to stop the line when you see that things are not going well, particularly when you know that at the end of that line is patient care. So I think that something that we try to do is help others influence without authority too. How do we equip our frontline team members with the empowerment and really even like the expectation of responsibility to speak up and for them to manage up and for them to influence up as both a skill set and as an expectation. So one mechanism by which we've done that in some hospitals throughout BJC is the implementation of structured idea boards is what we call them. So it is just a mechanism and an expectation by which team members are able to offer ideas about how we're going to solve problems, make those ideas transparent and public, get them in front of leadership to kind of vet them and work through them with those team members, and then ultimately for those team members to go implement them, for them to go make the change, for them to be empowered to go do so, or to escalate it and have other team members help them where necessary. But I think it's been a helpful way by which we kind of drive decision making down in the organization and to help people feel safe and expected to do that.
I would say that vulnerability is part of it, as it is, in my opinion, with most of the things that we do that are worthwhile. So, Ken, it really struck me when you said, I don't really have the courage to be a lineman. And I appreciate that, because I agree, I appreciate that. And I do think that the courage to be vulnerable, not as a lineman, but in a situation, in relationships, like in influencing and in taking that risk and trying to, to put yourself out there. I think it's just part of it, and you have to accept that it's part of it. What I think can make that easier, though, is to remember your ultimate goal is about the work, and it's not about you. So I took it very personally when this happened, with this board member, and and it wasn't. It was about the work. And so when you're being vulnerable, when you're putting yourself out there, and it feels scary, I mean, for me, what helps me is to remember, I really believe in what I'm doing. And so if I stay focused on what I'm doing and what I'm trying to get to, it just helps me take my own focus off myself.
One more point, and that's a great question, because my relationship with Warner now is so strong where I can challenge Warner in public. And I know he's not going to come back and attack me. So when other folks see that in the organization, say, wow, Ken challenged the CEO, and the CEO responded professionally, respectfully, and that sends a shadow that cast is huge. So when people challenge you, people are watching how you respond as well. So I think you could start influencing others just by how you handle it. And Warner and I, like I said, have a great relationship where I can do that, and other people in our organization say, wow, the CEO doesn't get upset and challenge and push back and tell Ken to shut up. So all about being respectful as well, obviously.
Very good. What other questions do we have?
So you guys touched on this a little bit about the skills it takes to be an influencer or a leader. And I'm curious if you guys think that those are skills that can be taught, or are those more just innate, natural skills that somebody could possess?
Missy, you want to start that one?
I think that they can be fostered. And by that, I don't mean that everybody can be president. What I mean is that, I think that some of the primary attributes of developing leadership skills are vulnerability, courage, and passion. So I think we can all foster that. And I think that, if we can't, then we might not be doing the right job for us. We might need to be doing something else where, we're passionate enough about what we're trying to accomplish that being vulnerable is, kind of worth it, and you're able to muster up the courage. So I think it can be taught and fostered within all of us.
Josh?
Yeah, I think it can be too, and I think it's important to to note too that you can influence without authority through influencing without authority is socio-technical, right? It's socio in that it is relationships, what we're getting at. It's also technical, and I think that there are practical tools that you can use to influence without authority too. That can certainly be taught, right? To leverage
Absolutely.
a tool is a certainly learnable thing. And then on the other side, kind of what you're getting at is like the emotional intelligence piece too. How do we raise our emotional intelligence to be able to be in a room, read people, know their desires, listen well. So I think that's kind of what most of our conversation is focused on. The technical piece, like something as simple as measuring people's attendance at project meetings. Like if you have a cross-functional project, measuring each discipline's attendance at those meetings is one mechanism that's more technical that you could influence people's behavior without having authority over them. I think there's other things you can do kind of in that realm that are certainly learnable.
Ken?
I think it just becomes a priority for all of us. If we really want to be nicer, better listeners, it all comes down to, are we going to make that a priority in our life to be, I'll say, better people, to be a servant leader? We all have it in us to do all those things. And it comes up to us as individuals, do we want that a priority in our life? Do we want to be the people come to for influence and guidance and advice? And is it learnable? I think so to some degree, but like Missy said, it's definitely fostering. We can all foster those skills within ourselves if we really, really want that to be. Because some people want to be promoted. And if that's your goal in life, it's going to be tough to be an influencer. I think you focus on yourself versus focus on others. So.
What other questions do we have?
Hello, my name is Sherry, and I think that this is a great discussion, and I appreciate all of your candid input. My question is that you have given like great feedback as far as when you say that people are people, and that you couldn't be a courage, or you don't have the courage to be a lineman, just seeing that transparency, as far as also providing people with the tools that they need to succeed, and just having meaningful relationships. So all of those are very important components. My question to you is, so for example, when you are not achieving the results that you need to achieve, do you adjust the way that you're influencing people, or do you still continue to use the same influence?
I have a quick thought, not a long thought, but I think, Missy, you've gotten at this throughout our conversation, is it's not about you maybe sometimes. It's maybe you're not the right person. Maybe you need someone else to be the influencer in that particular scenario. Maybe you need to drop out, and maybe you need someone else to step into that role that maybe has a bigger emotional bank account that Ken's referred to with that particular individual or that particular team. Recognizing that maybe you're not as indispensable as you think.
I think adjusting is important if you're not achieving the results. And by that, I don't mean not being, authentically, who you are and what you believe in, not adjusting, not necessarily changing the rules, but that you can, bring other people in to help support. One of the things I think is just in thinking about the influencing without authority or managing up, you don't necessarily, one of the things I think is not effective is to borrow someone else's authority, and by that meaning using the name dropping and that, like, I've got Warner behind me on this, like, that's not going to be effective. But you can bring in other people who might be able to just help both you and the other person see things a little bit differently and maybe make, help you guys move it forward a little bit more. So I think, I kind of gave up, like in that position, that situation that I shared, I was kind of like done. You know, it wasn't the first situation I'd had with him, so I was just, this was the last. In my mind, I was done. Well, I'm not done. You know, he's a board member, and you know, and I have to keep going with relationships. So it's about kind of, I think that patience is part of it. And sometimes it's giving things time, and sometimes it's having other people, maybe having someone else kind of come into the mix and just bring a new perspective that maybe can help both think about things a little bit differently.
And you mentioned something about winning. I think the key in my mind, how do you define winning? What's success look like? And I think if you have a common definition on both sides of what winning looks like, what the objective is, maybe it's just a different way of getting there. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you're successful. So be open-minded and think of, and maybe I try to get a common understanding on what success looks like in the end.
I think we might have time for one more question. Any more questions? Oh, we got a couple of them over here.
Hi, Lindy Schlesinger.
Morning.
So if you have people in different divisions and their real intention is to support that division, how do you get them to look at the whole team and be the team player when they're assessed and evaluated on what they contribute to that division?
That's a challenge. In the corporate world, I'll look at Ameren where we've got a lot of silos. Everybody has their own metrics, their own scorecards, and incentive comps based on my scorecard. I mean, so you got to get to the big picture. And Warner, we talk a lot about the name on the front. It's not no matter what name's on the back of the jersey, it's the name on the front. We're all working for Ameren. Well, it sounds great, but it's tough to get people to understand that, hey, I work in generation, I work over here in corporate, but at the end of the day, I work for Ameren. So how do you develop a common goal? I think that's where you're at is, how do you find somebody where you can work together and say, hey, here's what success looks like as a corporate level. And it's a challenge, no doubt about it. And it's a struggle for us in the corporate world with so many different divisions going on that we're all working for the same parent company, so to speak. It's, wish I had some great advice for you. But I think if you can try to get to a common understanding of what success looks like, I think it's a great start.
I would say the old saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink, kind of comes to mind here in that, we can influence, we cannot make, we cannot control another, necessarily. However, the water, what you lead them to, in a situation where someone's really focused on their metrics, if you can, again, validate and then see how, okay, those things that you're trying to achieve really would contribute greatly to this, or what we're trying to do here, I think can help that too. So it's really kind of getting into that mindset, like where are they coming from? And then, once you do that, again, that doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but I think you have a lot better chance of them being open to trying to contribute or trying to be part of the solution. If they can see, if that's where their focus is, if they can see how this is going to help that, or how that's going to help, the overall goal. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of someone feeling like they made a contribution. People like to know that they helped. I mean, it's just in us all to feel like they accomplished something. So I think that if you keep in mind that they will feel good, about contributing. I mean, somebody said to me once that you'd be surprised at how helpful building a relationship, how helpful it is to ask someone a favor, to ask someone for help, how much that contributes to building that relationship. And I thought it's one of the things that's really stuck with me. It's especially with people that you're kind of intimidated by, or that you feel like might be a little bit ahead of you, asking for help, then, they feel good and like you trust them. And then that basis helps you when you guys are trying to work towards something.
Anything to add? Okay.
I think we have at least 2 more questions.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Yoli. I want to ask, what is one word that best describes you personally and professionally as a leader? So one word for each.
Okay.
Don't everybody speak at once.
I'm thinking.
I hope, I'll say the word, and I hope it's true, trustworthy. I'm sorry? Yes, oh yes, yes. To me it's one and the same, yeah. People can trust me.
Josh or Missy?
Apparently I'm far too analytical.
Okay, so I feel like this is an overused word, but I would say authentic. You know, so I'm willing to be vulnerable in both work and home or personal life, and I think, yeah, it sometimes feels like maybe it would be better if I wasn't so much like that, but I would say that's probably it for me.
Thoughtful.
That's a
Very
good question.
good.
Yeah,
That is
that's
a good question.
I wanted a hyphenated word.
I know.
Like, can I say
Yeah.
true to myself? Can I say that?
Thought about that
Don't be
too.
afraid.
That kind of gives most.
Yeah, it's hard. That's a really good question.
Do we have one more?
Hi, I'm Christine, and you mentioned about these gatekeepers. And so how do you identify gatekeepers, and then how do you give them the tools or skills to them themselves influence others?
I think they're usually the no first people, you know, so there's often times that there are people that they start with no as opposed to yes. So typically I see that as a sign of either like overwhelm or like they have something very specific that they're in charge of, which is protecting someone's schedule or something like that. So trying to, so that's how you identify them, or at least that's how I identify them. And I don't know, trying to get around that, again, I think it's relationship building. It's helping, it's seeing if you can get them to be open to understanding what it is you're trying to do. That it's, and oftentimes the gatekeeper is trying to keep their person that they're protecting from having to give more. So if you can kind of, you know, express, share that you're not just there to ask for something, but that there is, you know, more of a give and take to it, then I think that can be helpful.
I have a couple kind of thoughts that might tie in. One, I think Ken's already made about like going and seeing, going to the actual place and making a real relationship with that person. It's a lot harder to say no in person. If you're calling someone or you just have an email relationship, that is very
Really
difficult or impossible to influence.
Easy to say no.
Absolutely. So I think, you know, taking a walk and going to see people makes a big difference. And then I think also recognizing you can define gatekeeper in a very liberal manner, in that everybody could be a gatekeeper in some manner. Like if you were to map out your influence would really look more like a constellation than it would like hub and spoke. You know what I mean? Like it would be the influence that you have is dependent upon the influence that you have on others, and it kind of like webs out. So, you know, I think it's recognizing the fact that you have to know who gatekeepers are to gatekeepers. And it's bigger than just your hub and spoke, I think.
And I'd probably add to that, and I think one way you can do that is validating again. Like, wow, I know there's a lot of, you know, there must be so much going on, or, you know, just trying to then like get people to open up in that way, that, you know, acknowledging that they have a big job to do, and, you know, not in a condescending way, but just, you know, acknowledging that,
Here's what I'm trying to accomplish.
this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and I know
Yep.
that there's so much going on. You know, is there a better way? Is there someone else? But, you know, I appreciate any counsel you can give me. Again, ask them to help you figure out a better way. If they're going to say no, do you have, you know, a suggestion?
alternative.
And now you've kind of given them the opportunity to contribute, and that can help build.
In psychology helps, doesn't it?
How about that? I don't know.
You can tell she studied psychology.
And what's unique is I am the gatekeeper for Warner. So I'm on the flip
good.
side. So you guys talk about these gatekeepers. Well, part of my job as a gatekeeper is So advice for all the folks who want to go through a gatekeeper, be prepared. Don't come to me on Tuesday saying, I need an hour with Warner tomorrow. It ain't gonna happen. So come, give me advance notice as much as possible. Most importantly is the why. Why do you need somebody's time? Be prepared. What do you need? Give as much information. Give them options. Give them, it's amazing what folks come to me with and saying, I need 2 hours next week with Warner. Well, sorry. You should have asked me 6 months ago. Or be prepared. Think things out. Plan ahead. And every leader is different. Every gatekeeper is different. So it's funny how the gatekeeper and the person start coming together. And it's amazing. The personalities are almost identical over years. So you get to know people, and relationships are important, no doubt about it. Going up and talking to people face to face is important. But asking them, hey, guys, I need this. Here's what I'd like to have. Here's why I need it. What's the best way to get this done? I don't need it done next week, but over the next 6 months, I need some time with X. So working with people, but explaining the why behind it, it really helps. And giving as much advance notice as possible. I mean, Jason and I talk how many times to try to get Jason in front of Warner. Sorry, no. But you get so many demands on people's times. And as a gatekeeper, your job is prioritize, protect as well, and make sure that the people wanting to go see that person really, really, really need to see him. So be prepared. Think ahead, plan ahead, months and months in advance.
Very good. That's really good advice, especially when you're talking at the CEO level. Yeah. Lots of preparation and lots of lead time.
But it's probably at all levels, really, because everybody's busy.
Everybody's busy. You're right.
Yeah. But sometimes you can't plan ahead. But if you can plan ahead things, next year's budget or whatever might be the case, the more advance notice, the more flexibility you offer, better chance of somebody saying yes.
Very good. Well, we've heard a lot today about leadership, and we've heard a lot about influencing without authority, which is something that American Cancer Society volunteers do on a regular basis. So it's relevant for us to expand a little bit more on what Ken said about servant leadership in the context of this event hosted by American Cancer Society. ACS has many volunteer opportunities that involve leadership development, planning, strategic advisement, and influencing events, people, and outcomes in the fight against cancer. So if you look on your table in front of you, you have a current list of the 2019 activities and mission initiatives for which the Society needs resources. If you would like to volunteer or get more information, please talk to the ACS staff. ACS staff, raise your hands. ACS staff that happen to be here today, and get more information from them or your local staff partner who invited you to this event. It's no secret that the American Cancer Society needs volunteers and resources to support their mission, and when we work together in partnership, as suggested today during our discussion, we can accomplish more in the end and see greater success. So I would encourage all of you to find a way to insert yourself in the American Cancer Society and volunteer for one of their initiatives. And also, you can get on Amazon and buy things for the Hope Lodge, which I found out the other day. So if you're interested in donating to the Hope Lodge here in St. Louis, they have an Amazon list, which makes your life so much easier. You should just go do that.
And Jennifer, on the note, think about leadership and development. Yeah. In your own corporate world or company you're in, you're somewhat limited at times on leadership development, but you go out in the community, the organizations out there, and ACS is a great one, where you want to develop leadership skills. I mean, it's a great way to, you can control your own development. And it's a great way to help people, help yourself, help your organizations, but also it's just the opportunities are endless.
Absolutely.
You may not have in your own company, but yeah, out in the corporate company, community world, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yep, absolutely. And ACS would love to have your support and your volunteership, and we would love to have you get involved in the organization. So I want to thank all of our panelists. Please help me thank them.
Thank you.
And I want to turn it back over to Fran Miley.
I want to echo Jennifer and everyone here. Thank you for being a part of our panel today. We really appreciate. I know personally some of the things I took away. I love the be curious. I love, the phrase strategic advisor instead of managing up. Trying to incorporate that more and tell me more and building those relationships and getting to where people are. So thank you for sharing all of your insights. Really do appreciate that.
You want me to hold it for you?
Yeah, for just a second.
Yep.
I want to also invite you to our upcoming society talks. We've got 2 more scheduled for this year. The next one is going to be May 16th. It's Society Talk, and it'll be focused on wellness. Alex Bain, if you want to. Alex is helping to organize, or not helping, she is organizing that session, so there'll be more information coming about that. And then in the fall, on September 13th, we have Conversation with CEOs Society Talk happening, so we hope that you'll join us for the other sessions coming up in 2019. As Jennifer mentioned, there on the table is a list of our volunteer events and initiatives that do need resources, and we would be very appreciative of having you involved. If you need more information about any of those things, we're happy to talk with you about those. We have some great ACS staff who organize all of those activities. Want to do a quick giveaway. I've got a bag of goodies, so does everybody get their raffle ticket ready?
I drew one for you.
Thank you. 2235. So we've got a winner. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you again, panel. Thank you, Jennifer, for moderating for
Thanks,
us.
everybody. Great questions.
And we hope to see you at the May event.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, it was fun.
Appreciate it.